Hey, I'm LaVeist. He's Eric ClaVille. You're tuned into LaVeist and ClaVille, telling you straight the way it is from a black male perspective. Let's get right to it. Today's show, Populism from Confederacy to Trump. Now, we talked about it already, this insurrection issue,
Yeah,
but it absolutely, the insurrection occurring on January 6th has got people shocked, but in many ways, Eric, you, myself, we're not shocked about this because actually the DNA of American populism and undergirded by racism and nationalism is never truly gone anywhere, right? I
right,
mean, it's
right.
always been there.
Yeah, and look, Will, you and I talk about this all the time, and this is an aspect of Trumpisms that is not really covered in the media. Well, it's really not covered at all.
Right.
And the reason why it's not covered is because it deals with regular people being left out of the system and believing that the elites are getting more than them and they have no chance whatsoever. I mean, look, I don't know where we can start with this, probably from the beginning, but I mean, keep in mind, Occupy Wall Street was not that long ago.
Right. Well, you essentially identify what populism really is all about. I mean, it's basically this political appeal to people who feel like they've been left out of the system, the
Absolutely.
disenfranchised, their lives are disappearing. And so you mentioned Occupy Wall Street. The bottom line is not often talked about a lot, but there are very similar characteristics to the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Tea Party movements, which developed
Absolutely.
around the same time, their connection to past movements in American history where
Absolutely.
people have felt left out and felt that their lives are slipping away. So, what Trump was able to do and what happened with the Tea Party, Trump is a next iteration of the Tea Party, which in a lot of ways was an
Yeah.
iteration of um, um, Newt Gingrich and what
Yeah.
he was doing in the
Oh man.
90s. Again, all based on if you appeal to people who feel that their lives have been left out, you can manipulate, you can use them to your advantage. And that's essentially
Absolutely.
whether it's on the left or on the right.
Absolutely. Now look, we talk about from Confederacy to Trump. So let me go back to the Confederacy.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
During that time period, 1860 leading up to 1861, all the way through 1865. I mean, the country itself, especially in the South, you had a lot of poor whites.
Right.
All right, a lot of poor whites. Most of the area was the country was subsistence farming in that particular area. So now you have these Northerners. You got individuals that are thinking at a higher level, quote unquote, and pushing these theories down and saying the
Higher culture. Yeah.
right, educated and the like, and really bringing the England style of the Great Britain style, which who is our mother. America, Great Britain is our mother. All right.
Right.
We revolted from them. We broke away. We're the child of England. So, they were bringing that type of elitism and lifestyle over to the US and emulating that, right? As you came further down from Maryland or Maryland and all the way through, it started to get more rural. It started to get more non-elitist, right? So that type of living. So the Civil War happened at a time not just where the country was dividing themselves
Right.
over the idea of slavery, but it was also economic. All right, let's not forget it. Economics plays a major role in every war, every conflict. So after the Civil War, then you get Reconstruction. The South's got to be rebuilt. You got the carpetbaggers. You got the banks putting the South in the hole financially and the like. A lot of people lost their wealth. So now you're starting almost from ground zero again. So you're building yourself up, and then after that, you hit the Great Depression. All
Well,
right.
even before that, I mean, during that process, you got sharecropping going on. So you went
Oh,
from folks being limited by slavery and indentured servitude. Now you get this new system that comes in after the Civil War with sharecropping, where you've got basically farmers renting plots of land or something for other people to farm and basically overburdening them with expenses, with rents, with all kinds of so that you can never
never.
actually get ahead. So this was affecting both whites and blacks.
That's right.
And I remember, I was just, as you were coming forward, when I was thinking about the movie I just recently watched, the movie The Great Debaters, which was about the Wiley College debaters, but it
Yeah.
was about a second story that was going on in there was Melvin Tolson, who was the debate coach, how he was working with the sharecroppers to try to unionize them, and
Yeah.
how he was being
White
accused,
and black.
white and black, and how
That's
he
right.
was being accused of being a communist. So you
Right.
see in this period, you see this going on because communism talks more about the commonwealth of people and everybody being able to move sort of forward together. So you see that coming in as a political system, a way of thinking to
Yep.
solve people's economic problems because of what you said. People in the system feeling that their lives are being taken away from them, they can't get ahead, and so forth. So the message became, well, these guys like Tolson or other people are bad because they are communists. They want
Yeah.
to, take over our total way of life and our total way of living. When that was their way of trying to address this whole issue of people feeling disenfranchised and that their
Yeah.
lives are being taken away from them.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. And by the way, just a quick note about that movie. The son of Tolson was a history professor at my alma mater, Southern University, right there in my building.
So that we throwing out shout outs. Melvin Tolson was a Lincoln man. He was a
That he was.
graduate of the Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. All right. So let me
Well,
just represent.
absolutely, absolutely. And folks, we love our HBCUs. We love our
Right.
university. So you're going to hear a lot of that between Will and I here. So with that being the case, now you look at the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression itself was because the elites again were playing with people's money. They were playing with it, and gambling on Wall Street with it. And all of a sudden, you get this. It's kind of like a bridge. So you have this bridge that's holding up, and then
Right.
you have the bridge that comes down, and then you have this line, right? So here, when you look at this area, this was the Great Depression era, right? The elites were here, those that didn't have were here.
Right.
That was a huge gap in wealth, right?
Right.
And individuals have those that have and have nots. So now you get that dive. And when you get that dive in the Great Depression, the have-nots and the haves are almost equal because people lost everything.
Everybody catching it. Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank goodness for Franklin Roosevelt, with the New Deal. All these plans that he's putting in place, these social security, society security blankets. Social Security itself was created. Other social programs were created to help the masses. And again, more so white Americans, right?
Sounds like democratic socialism. Huh?
It sounds just like it, right? So he put these protectionisms in, to help society. And then over in Europe, they created more of a socialism to protect society. High taxes, believing that individuals at the top should pay more. And then what you have there is now you have services that are offered, just as, a way of life.
Right.
So you don't have to have health insurance. You just simply go to the doctor, right? Some countries in Europe, you don't even pay for education all the way up to a doctorate degree. You just go to the university or go to college, or university as they call it. So now you see in America these social safety nets.
Right.
But it wasn't until when you got around, Will, the 1980s, right? When now you see one of my favorite movies, Wall Street, with
Greed is good.
Absolutely. Greed is good. And greed started taking over. Because again, the only way, Wall Street is basically itself, it has its good points. But really, it's somewhere where you gamble. You gamble on an idea, you gamble on your company, people invest, you give projections on how well you think you're going to do,
Right.
and then you make money. That's a gamble, right? That's a chance that you're taking. So now you get Wall Street. Greed is good. And over again, you hear this. Over and over again, you hear greed is good. So now you get the first blimp that happened over in England. It was in the 80s. I think it was Black Monday that happened there. Then we had Black Friday. And of course, I remember in the 80s, all the comedians saying Black Friday. They woke up one morning and said, oh, it's a holiday. So they went back to sleep. They're like, we don't have to go to work, Will. It's a black holiday.
Right, and then as you continue to coming forward, you're in the Reagan years now, and then you're coming forward
Oh,
into the Clinton years. That's when, as I mentioned earlier, Newt Gingrich is now using some of these same themes to capitalize on to advance his agenda. And so a lot of Republicans, as you were mentioning, the New Deal and Franklin Roosevelt, a lot of Republicans that exist now and sort of within the Gingrich era and coming forward have been trying to undo many of those same policies uh, that FDR put in there because they just philosophically have the difference of opinion on how you should address these issues, which gives rise to, the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party is basically many of the same things, even going back to the Civil War, talking about smaller government. I want the government out of my business and so forth, but with this undergirding nationalism and racism there. This is where you also get coming out of it the birther movement, which came later and so forth. This anti-immigration strain. Again, we don't want those people coming over here. They're going to take away our livelihood. So when you see it start culminating into what we saw on January 6th, and you understand the thread of this country, where this is coming from, it shouldn't be shocking at all in any way.
right. Well, right. You're exactly right. It shouldn't be shocking, but it is because we forget history, right?
Mhm.
We forget that these things happen over and over again unless we put protections. I don't call them regulations. I call them protections.
Right.
Protectionism to help people and to help companies not to do what they do. Again, we're all subject to greed. We're all subject to all the devices, the negative devices of the flesh, right? We're all subject to jealousy. We're all subject to envy. We're all subject to these. But we put protectionisms on ourselves to keep ourselves from acting upon these things that we're all subject to. So when it comes to government, that becomes overridden by the influence and the money of these private companies, right? So the question is, what is the answer? So let's take a look at what took place with the tech bubble. Let's go to the 2000s. We had the first.
I know it well. I was right in the middle of it. I know it well. Go ahead. Go ahead. Start twitching. Start
look,
getting
man.
fast now.
Well, a lot of us during that time period that were early investors or investing kind of heavy,
Right.
we're getting out of college. We had great corporate jobs. That's when corporate was making it rain.
Right. That's when, or working for companies where we just knew we were an internet startup.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead. Keep
Well,
going. Keep
look, I remember even for myself, just when my first job out of college, right? I signed, and when I signed the contract, I got there. They said, "Oh, we're giving everybody in the company a raise," right? I mean, so I come in with a raise.
Right.
After I signed, I got a company car, I got a company gas card, I got a company phone, and that's when cell phones were not a novelty, right? You get a cell phone in your local gas station. But no, this is when you had to pay for 30 minutes, right? And you make sure, okay, I need to get off my phone because I got 26 minutes left, for this particular plan. But I got all this. Now, again, you're talking about a kid out of undergrad coming into corporate America, voila, So now, naturally, money's flowing, Will. And look, we all were caught up in it, right? We all were investing. We all were, buying this and buying that, maybe an additional house and here and there. Tech bubble comes, all of a sudden something happens, right?
Wow.
And the people who in the middle, well, first of all, the people on the bottom got wiped out. Those that's in the middle got knocked down to the bottom, right? So now we start leveraging, all right? Start cutting back. My company card gets taken. I get a 60-day notice. You got to turn your card in because corporations starting to rein back, right?
Well, be glad you didn't have one of those cars that they had the technology had the key to your ignition that if you miss your payment, you was stopping right in the middle of the highway.
Absolutely. Look, matter of fact, you could even get in the car. You know what I'm saying? So that key wouldn't work. It's like I got a problem. No, we took this car back. But so now, those of us were knocked down to the bottom, but those that are on the top stayed at the top. And what I'm talking about are speculators, right? These guys kept speculating. And then we moved toward the big crash. Now, the tech crash was in the early 2000s. Enron happened early 2000s.
Right.
Enron was the warning, right? That was the major warning. It's kind of like that big tremor before the big quake. That was Enron. Kenneth Lay, rest in peace. But that company invested all of its employees' retirement in their company stock. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about people were just skyrocketing, right? Accounts were high. And I never forget when Enron fell. You got people walking out with boxes.
Right. I remember that image, yeah.
Boxes. Basically, they went from having a $500,000 to $1 million in their investment account for retirement to zero overnight. I mean, literally overnight.
Crazy.
So Will, what happens when people like that lose a job, right? What happens?
Well, they lose a job. They lose their sense of esteem. They start looking for scapegoats. They start looking for other people to blame. They become susceptible to those who still have resources, still in power, who want to manipulate and use the voting power that those people still have to advance their own agenda, their own advancement. And so you see that same type of thing is what happened in Nazi Germany, where, again, you start identifying scapegoats. It's not the system and its lack of safeguards that created the situation where you've lost everything that you had, but it's those people over there, or it's that person over there. It's affirmative action, or it's immigration. These people are taking your jobs. But another piece in there that's interesting on the flip side, on the other side of the spectrum, is that you had a lot of young people who were coming up in this era who never saw that prosperity that you and I got a chance to see, and then coming up with all of this, their image, their idea of the system that is very corrupt, it can't be trusted,
right?
Not going to work. There's a sense of hopelessness that this is not going to ever work for me, and so you start seeing the rise of the Occupy Wall Street.
There you go.
So and what do you see in there? You see people concerned about their health care. If I can't get a job and my job is tied to my ability to have health insurance is tied to my job, then you need to decouple that. And then if you got an economy where I really can't even get a full-time job that's good paying, and I got to rely on all these part-time jobs because you don't want to pay people full-time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's again, it's coming down to economics. So it's just so powerful how even on these opposite sides of the political spectrum, many of the issues are so much of the same.
But Will, you said so much that got us right here, right? That people don't realize. You said multiple jobs without benefits. The Occupy Wall Street and which was caused by the stock market, the mortgage collapse, right? In the stock market, gave way to what's called the gig economy now. That created the gig economy.
Right.
And I would go back. You said young people also didn't experience as well. But you also had middle-aged workers, 50 years old, 49, 50, 55. Bachelor's degrees, professionals, some profession you just need a bachelor's degree, to be a professional. Some with master's degrees, right? Some, not so much doctorate, but master's degrees and so forth. These individuals with a lot of experience, 25 plus years experience, they lost everything, right? Now, they leverage their homes to pay for the education of the kids, right? They leveraged their rental property for those that had a second home, right? You leverage that. And then all of a sudden, the bottom falls out. Your house is worth, $350,000 or $500,000.
Fraction of what it was, right?
Cut in half. But now you're upside down. So very quietly, the banks and the mortgage companies now, they're upside down. So they get bailed out by, the Bush administration.
Right.
They get bailed out. And on one piece of paper, remember this, on one piece of paper, all the bank heads were called to the Federal Reserve. The door was lot. Nobody was allowed to leave. And the Treasury gave these banks on one sheet of paper and a signature. They just filled in the amount. You take 25 billion, you take 15 billion, you take this amount of billion, and we want you to reinvest it back into the economy, right? That sounds good. So that seems like we're going to get back up on our feet, right?
Right.
But guess what they did? There were no stipulations to their money. So they gave it back to themselves as bonus.
Right, because greed is still good. Because
greed was great.
And that's the thing that we continue to see.
Absolutely.
And the strain that's continued to make us susceptible to people like a Trump who will come along, play on those same concerns, those same fears, use the same old tropes that have worked for others, really has no real interest in uplifting the people that have now become his base. And because they are desperate, because they are angry, because they are so filled with needing someone or some way out of this situation, they're seeing this guy as a savior. And then you go on the other side, right? You see again the rise of Alexandria or Ocasio Cortez and others who have saw that the Occupy Wall Street movement was lacking sort of that political sophistication and political strategy. Because remember, they were just out there and sort of loosely saying that we want change. But they looked at that, and Bernie Sanders, was really one who really capitalized on that and started to really try to harness it into a movement. So a lot of what we see now playing out.
But keep in mind, Bernie Sanders was the godfather of this.
Well, I mean, he had been talking about it for many years because he was, again, he's part of that same strain, that has always been there. It's just like it just goes cyclical. It just takes its time to come back and become in vogue again. But it's always there because the system, as you pointed out, still fundamentally doesn't have enough safeguards in it. There's too much susceptibility to greed in it. So it's always going to come back to this again, where there's going to be another leader. There'll be someone who will be able to, capitalize on it either positive or negative way.
Now, Will, you mentioned something that I think all of us need to be aware of. That is going to be here and it's going to come back until we correct this wealth gap. I mean, so going back to Occupy Wall Street, I remember we had lawyers who were partners at firms or associates, associate partners or junior attorneys or associates themselves, that one day they were making 160, 180, sometimes 250. And they were laid off. How do you replace $250,000, right? After being laid off. Now, some of those individuals, what happened was a lot of that legal work then went to companies that gobbled it up, and now you saw them, contracting with lawyers for a fraction of the money that they would make at those firms. But that's all they could do, right? So we saw this all in every industry. Either it just completely shut down or they farmed it out. Now, on the rebound, what the partners and the owner and the name partners of these firms did, they said, these equity partners, they were like, look, we can make more money and get more productivity contracting the work out and not take on the load where we at the top that can continue to make the money, right? Going back to Wall Street, money never sleeps, right? Wall Street too. That's exactly what happens. So now you get those people that are angry, they're mad. All of a sudden you get this Tea Party movement, and all of a sudden you get this, as you stated, attacking on people of color, Black people, programs where they see maybe Black people are getting ahead of them. And now you get this birthing movement, right? This birthing movement comes, he wasn't born, and then born in America.
Yeah, that must be the reason. That must be the reason why, my life is what it is. I can't get my teeth fixed. It must be because he wasn't born here. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it firsthand. It was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And who jumped on it? Who took that torch and ran with it? Former President Donald J. Trump.
The master salesman, and ultimate pimp. I mean, that's what pimps do. They look at situations and capitalize on them for their own interests. And I can tell you, as a New Yorker growing up,
Yeah,
in New York and being very familiar with Trump, that's why I was like, come on, there's no way this guy is going to become president. I mean, people are going to see through this. I mean, you notice Trump never won New York or never had a shot. I mean, but it's again when people begin to get in a point of desperation,
that's right.
and let's be mindful, let's be honest about this. That was part of what even got President Obama into office.
Yeah,
This feeling of, look, this system as it is not working for me.
absolutely.
So let me go with this guy who seems to be honest, who seems to be talking the kinds of change that's needed. He was able to get a lot of white Americans to vote for him, who
That's right.
honestly were looking for change because they had seen their economic lives diminish. So,
Will, you hit you on
so
the
to
head.
just say it, to just say it's just only about
Racism.
racism
Yeah,
is
and
not being honest about it. It's not being
that's it. That's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You had whites in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, areas that were hit hard by the what we call now the Rust Belt.
That's right.
Manufacturing hit hard. They voted for Obama because they were tired of the elitism, right?
Right.
Republicans were not doing what they said they would do for them. They saw it over 8 years. It wasn't there. When Bush left office, he was probably one of the most unpopular presidents.
That's
Well,
right.
not he was, but he was, which is why nobody wanted him to campaign on the campaign trail because he was bringing them down. So
And the economy tanked with it.
absolutely, now you see the rise of Obama, right? And he had hope, but unfortunately, what happened is that he was again policy wise, there was nothing different between him and Mitt Romney. They're both conservatives as it relates to policy. So he talks to he relates to the people very well, but it's about stability, right? Stability for the system. But when the system doesn't work for the people revolt. And that's what we saw in part all through Trump's era. Now, of course, he used racial
That's
language,
right.
charged language to get people out. But if you think about it, so one of the statistics from the January 6th insurrection, which is a day that we live in infamy in our country and the world, 60% of those people, they said, were in financial straits that they had indicted so far, either filed for bankruptcy, in foreclosure, or in desperate financial straits.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. 60%.
Mm.
So again, what does it tell you? It's not just about racism, it's about the system. So what happens now, man? Has the system changed? No. Look, you got Amazon, $10 billion, right? Did not pay any tax. Wait a minute, no, $100 billion. Didn't pay any taxes, right? On that money. So billions and billions of dollars. And you have these individuals who are making this amount of money and paying this amount to the people on the ground, right? No benefits. They're pushing them harder. Man, look, I had one Amazon delivery guy. It was so hot outside. He's like, man, I'm about to pass out. I said, hold on, let me get your bottle of water. Man. Here, take two, right? Because they were pushing and pushing and pushing them so hard, man. So, Will, at this point, the question becomes, what do we do?
Right. What do Black people do? As you said, the system hasn't changed. So we know it's susceptible, it's cyclical, so it's likely to come back. So what do we need to do? And I think what do we need to do is we've got to look at some of these specific policies that's going to help people to be able to do something with the resources that they do have and be able to
Absolutely.
move forward. So for example, that's why this issue of Medicare for all or
Yeah,
decoupling healthcare from your job is a critical issue. It's not just about,
absolutely.
whether or not the system is government run healthcare. I mean, look, people, Donald Trump, the former president, came down with COVID-19 and he went into a government run hospital and got Cadillac healthcare service. That was a government run hospital that he was at. Okay.
And he's alive today.
And he's alive today, where many people, and it's been it's been documented that he was a lot sicker than was let on. So he got Cadillac treatment at a government-run hospital. So it's not about government-run healthcare is bad. You've got government-run system. Medicare, Medicaid are government-run systems.
Absolutely.
Okay? So it's not about that. We got to look at the need to decouple, to separate. Having a job is connected to my healthcare, so that people are not spending such enormous amounts on healthcare. Another thing we got to look at the policy of reducing or eliminating student loan debt. Student loan debt has been saddling African Americans, middle to lower income whites. Now you go to school to get an education, thinking that's going to lead to upward mobility,
That's right.
and you get saddled with all of this debt. So there are some specific policies that we've got to fight for. We've got to fight to get past in order to make a difference in people's lives, and those are two of them.
Yeah, Will, you mentioned student loans. And first, what should we do? Number one, this is the time to get your financial health in order.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down with your spouse, sit down with your family, line out your obligations, write them down, look at what you owe, what you got coming in, and what you can do to even the playing field, right? Now, we're not saying you're going to be able to pay everything off or sell your house today, but at least you can start the process. I mean, that's exactly what we have to do right now, right? Secondly, you got to take your own, be realistic, right? You mentioned people getting degrees and saying, "Oh, I can do better," and so forth, which is what happened after the tech bubble burst, which is what happened after the mortgage bubble burst, which is what happened during this time period. Oh, I'll just go to school and get another degree for a job that doesn't exist, right? So, you have to be very honest about yourself. Right now, my wife and I getting ready to send our oldest son to college, and I'm telling him, we're putting you in position to get money that's out there that's available. And we're not paying, we don't want to pay not one penny for college because we shouldn't have to. If you get great grades, make sure you're focused and keep supporting, giving that moral support, and that emotional support, your kids will do well, right? So it's the same thing with us. We got to continue to, number one, keep an eye on the goal, set the goal, make sure you understand what your obligations are, and then start to continue to walk that and revisit it every single day, right? Because at the end of the day, we can't depend on the government to do everything for us. We simply can't. Finally, student loan forgiveness. We need student loan forgiveness, elimination, right? And one thing that Biden said, he said he's willing to forgive up to 50,000. He said 10, but he's not going to do 50. But if Congress got to do that, he'll sign it. But up to 50,000 plus the interest. That's key. Pay attention to every word that's in policy, ladies and gentlemen, because just like we saw school desegregation, but it said with all deliberate speed, right?
That means wait.
You're right. Wait and see. Not what the law is going to do.
See, and maybe. And the other thing I would add into that is people have to plan for their retirement. It's never too early, but it can absolutely be too late to plan for your retirement. So you got to put money away as you got to think about now and next simultaneously. Now and next. So you got to plan for your retirement because you have no knowledge of how long you may or may not live. So take us home, Eric.
Yeah, so, I want to talk about the retirement part again. I was talking to my son, and we were talking about, he wants to be a mechanical engineer. We're talking about companies that you work at and so forth and so on. And I said, son, let me give you some advice that one of my law professors gave me. He said, you're going to make a lot of money, but live like a college student for 5 years when you get out of school. Don't go get the big car or anything like that. Keep living, pay off all your debt, and start saving. And something that, we were told, live off of one paycheck, right? If you can live off one paycheck, those first 5 years, set your expenses there. Then, like you said, Will, your security blanket is there. You create your own security blanket. We live in the United States of America where dreams come true. People come here to get their wealth and to make and to get their fortune. We can do the same. We built this country. This is our country, and we love it. So that's it for today for LaVeist and ClaVille. We thank you for joining us. Catch us on our social media. Just put in at LaVeist and ClaVille, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're out there. And until next time, Be safe and be well.